Right, y'all, I'm still in transit here. Um, Driving through Texas now. Yesterday was a weird day. Lots of very mixed emotions. It was a tough, sort of frustrating day. Uh, Putting up with the Dallas traffic, trying to find my way to the venue where the Hives were playing. Yes, I came all the way to Dallas, Texas to see the Hives. It's the first time I've ever seen them live. I wanted to see them live at some point in my life, and I am not sorry. I am not the least bit sorry that I did it. I would have seen them in Georgia if they'd come to Georgia, but the closest they were coming to where I lived was Dallas, Texas. So I said, fine. Purchased my ticket for Dallas, Texas, and the rest is history. But I had a difficult time finding the venue. Nothing, I mean, just boring stuff to talk about. Nothing, really earth-shaking. It was hot, and then when I found a public parking place, of course, they sodomized me with the price, and just all the annoyances of the big city. Which Dallas is as bad as Atlanta as far as traffic goes, maybe worse. It's gotten worse. I lived there for 3 years, from 1998 to 2001, when I was going to grad school at University of Dallas. I lived in Irving, which is part of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, and it was nothing. I would say it's been more just like Atlanta. It's gotten overdeveloped, and it's just too crowded now, and there's too much. Anyway, so I had a lot of frustrations just finding my way to the venue, and then I was waiting there outside the venue for a while, in the heat, although there was some shade. And it was around this time that I found out about Charlie Kirk. The first thing I heard was that he'd gotten shot. And I figured he got shot, but he was okay. And then I heard that he was not okay, that he died. And this had a strangely powerful effect on me. I say strangely just because Charlie Kirk has never really registered in my mind. He's not a figure that I have followed. He's not somebody that I find interesting to follow, which isn't to say he wasn't interesting. Because the more I look back on him and his life, and he seemed like a really good person, like a very decent man. And the more I heard that, I didn't know he was so young. I didn't know he was just 31 years old, and that he had two children, two very young children. It's so awful. And so it hit me pretty hard. And I know that all the caveats that you can say about him, that he was he was very much the Zionist and so forth. Although I've heard some things that his Zionism might have wavered somewhat, or that he was questioning certain things about what Israel was doing. And I saw some videos to that effect, essentially. But basically, he was, very, very pro-Israel with regard to Gaza, which is, I think that's a difficult thing to reconcile with being a man of conscience. Just not saying you have to be, pro-Palestinian, but just to be to be rah Israel when there are obvious atrocities happening in Gaza. You know, women and children being killed every day, and it's just going on and not stopping. So yeah, that's you know, that's hard to reconcile with somebody who, I think he was Catholic. I think he was, or at least he was Christian. I'm pretty sure Catholic. I might be wrong. I'll have to check up on that. But in any case, he just seemed like a really good, decent man. And yeah, he went to these campus events and you know, challenged people. He challenged crazy campus leftists. But he didn't seem to do it in a spirit of you know, trying to make fun of them or trying to mock them. And in general, he was not a how do I say this? You know, there's some controversialists who revel in being controversialists. There are some people who say outrageous things. You know, but this guy Charlie Kirk, I know that Nick Fuentes and the Groypers were the bane of his existence, because they would always come to his events and try to, you know, talk about Israel, talk about the JQ and stuff, and but he didn't. He seemed to even respond. Like he was a mild-mannered person. He handled being challenged, or he handled people trying to get under his skin. It seemed like he handled that pretty well. But you know, it wouldn't have surprised me so much if it had been somebody like Nick Fuentes, even though I like Nick, or if it, even it had been like Sam Hyde. Oh, I like Sam, but I mean, those are guys who are obviously courting controversy, and they say things that they know are going to upset people. Charlie Kirk seemed like someone who was not setting out to upset anyone, and that he came to these campus events because he wanted to have dialogue. It seemed like he was sincere about it, and wanted to say, you know, freedom of speech is good, and we should be able to talk about these things and get along in spite of our differences. You know, sort of that. He sort of had that kind of attitude or demeanor about him. So to think that somebody would just callously, you know, put a bullet in his head at a public event in front of his wife and his young children is just so upsetting. And like I said, I'm surprised that it hit me so hard, because he just didn't register to me very much. So in the midst of all of that, I had this event, this concert that I was going to, the Hives, one of my favorite bands that I was finally able to see live. I've been a fan of theirs, you know, since like 2001 or so, and they're a very, very unique band, and they are incredible live, just like I said in my video last night. You know, I would recommend seeing seeing the Hives live should be on your bucket list, whether you know the Hives music or not, because it was so much fun. It was so enjoyable. There was such high energy, and it was so entertaining. So in the midst of just having a blast, having a ball, you know, seeing one of my favorite bands live, being in the front row, almost like front and center. The downside was that I had to stand, like they let us in at around 7 and the show didn't start until much later, because I thought it would start at 8, but then there was an opening act that played at around 8. So the Hives didn't really take the stage until close to 9. So I was on my feet because I had this prime spot. You know, I'd gotten there really early, and I was front and center. Now, the only way it could have been better is if I'd actually been in the front, where I could have leaned on the railing, and you know, that would have. But I didn't. I wasn't that lucky. I mean, I didn't get there quite soon enough for that. Or there were people who got to go in ahead of me, and they all assumed that spot. But I got basically the second row. It was standing room in the, you know, at the front of the venue. There's a balcony where people were seated, but I wanted to be close to the action. I always like to be close to the action. And I got to see Howlin' Pele Almquist, the band leader, up close. He got off the, you know, he walked off the stage and walked into the audience, or walked close to the audience, where the audience was, and, you know, leaned really close. So I got a lot of great video, great pictures. You know, it was pretty unreal. At one point, he slapped a high five. He was slapping high fives, and I put my hand out, and he slapped my hand. Another time, he was leaning back into the crowd, and the people put out their hands to hold him up, and I put my hand on him. So yeah, I got to touch him. I got to touch Howlin' Pele. So yeah, it was just this fun event, you know, incredibly enjoyable. The only problem was my feet were so tired at the end of it all, you know, that I had a heart, like, I could barely walk. It's also my age, you know, you get a little bit less flexible as you get older. Speaking of which, you know, there were a lot of other people around my age. It was a very Gen X crowd. There were some people who were younger, but I would say Gen X showed up the most. It was a pretty Xer heavy audience. So at least I didn't feel out of place the way I have at some other events where I've obviously been the oldest one there. Yeah, so strange day, but like this all going on, and then in the back of my mind, I'm mourning over Charlie Kirk and his death, and you know, wondering what that portends for everything, for the state of things. You know, if somebody just that mild-mannered and really kind of milquetoast in a way, that's part of, I guess, why I didn't follow him, because he didn't say anything that really caught my attention, or that, you know, because he wasn't striving to be provocative. But even somebody like him, you know, a moderate conservative, if you will, a center-right figure, if you will. Although he was behind Trump, so I know for a lot of leftists, a lot of people who are left of center, that automatically makes him the most radical right-wing person ever. But he really wasn't. He really did not have that demeanor or perspective or attitude at all about him. I think he was more noble of a person. You know, sometimes the more noble people can be boring, you know, or less interesting. I shouldn't say boring, because he probably wasn't boring, but just, he doesn't say anything that really catches your attention. So and he's more well known as being the guy who, you know, the nemesis of the groypers, or whatever, the more controversialist types, who are always trying to get his goat. But wow, that was a really strange combination of feelings. Feeling so up for this show, feeling so happy that I'm getting to see my favorite band, or one of my favorite bands ever. You know, it was a dream come true in some ways, to finally get to see them live. And again, I stand by what I said last night. They're the best live band ever. But in the midst of all that, having this sorrow about this man that I've never met, that I never really had thought about before all that much. So yeah, strange day. What do y'all think? What do y'all think about Kirk, and what's going to be the fallout? I don't know. Let me know if you've got ideas or whatever.